Did you know that tall specific brick and mortars once existed? Like actual physical stores selling tall clothing. I don't know about you, but I'm just recently finding out about this. These days, we're just not used to finding what we need in stores. Pants often fit like capris, the long sleeves hit like three-quarter sleeves, and the dresses and skirts never quite reach the right length. And as tall women, I'm pretty sure we're all frustrated by this, and it kind of makes me wish that these physical stores that were selling tall clothing were still around. That's why I'm excited for today's episode. I am joined by not one, but two amazing guests, Amy and Alli, the tall sister duo behind a tall brand called Amalli Talli. They've experienced all of the tall girl fashion struggles that we have struggled with, and they decided to do something about it. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about why tall clothing isn't sold in stores, why tall brick and mortars don't really exist anymore, what other brands get wrong when trying to make tall clothing, and of course, the story behind their brand, Amalli Talli. We have a lot to cover today, so without further ado, let's get into it. Good morning, everybody. You are currently listening to a Tall Girls podcast hosted by a tall girl named India. I hope everyone who's tuning in today is doing super fantastic. I am joined by two very, very special guests today, the founders of Amalli Talli, Amy and Alli. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing today?
We're doing good.
It's
Yeah.
bright and early. It's bright and early. Sorry to get you guys on here super early, but you know what? Mornings are always good times to have a chat. You know what I mean?
We feel
I
you.
agree.
No, this works great for us.
Awesome. But yeah, just take a second to introduce yourselves.
I'm Allie. I'm one half of Amalli Talli. I represent maybe like the shorter end of the tall spectrum at 5'10". And on this team, as far as roles go, I'm kind of like the mathlete, the nerd, the details person. So I'm really in like the finance side of our business, the production side, and then, I mean, we wear all the hats, but that's kind of my main role here. So,
No one throws down with an Excel spreadsheet better than you. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy. I'm the taller end of this partnership. So I am just shy of like 6'4". And so in terms of scope and responsibilities, I tend to do more of like Allie's really good with the details and making sure that everything is what we need to do. And I'm more big picture. So marketing, branding, some of that type of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that introduction. And fun fact, Ali, you said you were 5'10", so that's the short, tall girlies. That's the short,
yeah.
tall side of things. And then Amy, it's like funny because I say that from like 6 foot to 6'3", it's like average tall, and then 6'4" and up is tall, tall. So I
Yeah.
guess you kind of fit in like the tall, tall area.
We do. It's just kind of nice that we're both built the way we are because that's such an important component of our business. It's one of the primary reasons, well, it was a huge reason that we wanted to do this because a lot of times what worked for Allie didn't work for me, and what worked for me didn't work for Allie. So it was like, wait a second, we're both tall, we're tall in different ways, but we both have really important perspectives that need to be considered in this niche. So we're kind of thankful that we're both built the way we are.
Oh, well, that is true. That's very, very true. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of like your business and why you started it and so forth, I want to hear about your experiences growing up as tall girlies. The good, the bad, the ugly. What was growing up tall like for you guys?
I think at 5'10", it's been probably way different than Amy's experience. And I feel like it's been different in different years. So like high school, we are from small town Iowa, went to a really small high school. Obviously, both of us for our classes were one of the tallest. Amy, you probably were the tallest girl in
Mhm.
your class. And I feel like during that time, that comes with a lot of pressure. Like if you're tall and have any ounce of athleticism in a small town, they're like, you got to carry this sports department on your back,
Sports.
like you got to do all the things and, be really good at it. And Amy and I both only liked volleyball, so I feel like it was kind of a struggle of like kind of letting down people. Like I know we shared
Mm.
that experience because we
Mhm.
both like didn't want to play basketball. They wanted me to high jump. I cannot jump to save my life in like that regard. So I feel like high school was kind of this, you know, thing of being pressured to play all the sports, do all the things. You do go through that time where you're taller than all the dudes in your class. And, it's again, small town. You're one of like the tallest people. So it's just a different experience. I feel like there were times in high school I struggled with that. And we've talked about this actually we had an interview with Shape Magazine once, but from a perspective of like you're eating more than your peers, you're just naturally like a bigger waist size than your peers. So in your teen years, like even though 5'10" doesn't seem that tall when, the rest of your classmates are like 5'3", there's stuff like that that definitely affects you. And I wish there had been more people to speak to like, you need to eat more, especially because you're like active and you're tall, like things like that. But also having my sister and our brother, everyone in our family is taller than me. And even though Amy had her own like struggles and experiences that she'll speak to. She never let me know that she like hated being tall and was like really insecure. So I always like to tell people like even if you're feeling that, if you're modeling something different, it is really impactful. Like I watched her play volleyball and be super confident on the court and I like honestly wanted to be taller than 5'10" because I was like all about it. So I think growing up in a taller family helped me a little bit as the youngest sibling. And in college, played college volleyball my freshman year. I was a shorty, so like I honestly didn't feel like, it was kind of an opposite experience of high school. It's like I'm surrounded by all these like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" beauties. I'm like, this is just, like I'm a shorty. And then it's like it flips again when you leave college, you're done being an athlete. Like that part of your life is over. I walked into corporate world. I am like massive in a high heel and like workwear. And so it's taken different turns at different points in life. But I think having my family, like I said, Amy as a role model, like really helped me not feel like it was negative a lot of the time. I actually spent a lot of time wanting to be taller because I wanted to play at like a higher level in volleyball and all the things. But I did have struggles as a teen in regards to like overall sizing too, right? Like, so not just your height, but wanting to be, the same kind of size as everybody else was. So that's kind of my experience.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just so grateful because we have a great relationship with our parents. We have phenomenal parents. We're really lucky that way. And one of the things that I always tell people is growing up, our mom used to always say, the one thing I will always remember about our mom is she always said, mind over matter, like mind over matter, no matter what the situation. So if there was a situation where I wasn't like super comfortable, or I was having a rough time, her advice was always like, it's kind of your mindset over what's actually going on. And so that was really something maybe in the beginning I didn't understand, but the older I got, the more experiences I had that started to kind of be the voice in the back of my head. But it was tough. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy in high school. And I was taller than, I had one of those like late growth spurts. So I was
Mm.
always like taller. But then by the end of high school, I really exploded and I still grew into college. Like my freshman year, and I was really lucky. I earned a volleyball scholarship. And so my freshman, I mean, the coaches had to be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing because this girl's still going." Um, that was really tough. And we did live in small town Iowa. And, obviously internet shopping wasn't a thing back then. So we had one store in our little mall. And if I could walk in and sometimes like hit the jackpot, I might come out with a pair of jeans, but usually not. It was the scene of a lot of crimes, of meltdowns in the locker room or not in the dressing room. And so it just was what it was. It was. But then I look at it and think like I always had my mom and my sister. that to play this role. And my mom was always like, you can't change who you are. I mean, I really remember my mom in the dressing room more than once saying, you can't change how you're built. That's how God built you. That's how it is. So it's mind over matter. You can either learn to figure out like what you love about it, or, it's not going to change. And so that did kind of help me over time. And I think, just finding things that I really loved and found confidence in helped play a role. But yeah, not an easy road.
Yeah, it seems like all of us have had like a similar high school experience.
Yeah.
It's somehow always high school that was just, we're all down bad, but it's okay. We made it through. We made
It's like
it through.
I
rite of
think
passage.
I think
True.
it's because like the guys have such a later growth spurt. That's what makes it
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
extremely painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had like Amy grew late and I grew early. So I was like
Mm,
seventh, eighth, ninth, and I was done. So we kind of have different
Mhm.
timelines there.
experiences in that regard too. But I feel like middle school was like rough because I was like,
Yeah.
going all the way up then and nobody else was with me. So yeah.
And what was something involving your height? It could be a question, it could be a comment. What was something involving your height that you absolutely hated hearing?
Mm.
Literally any of it, to be
Oh,
honest. Like, I don't know that there was one thing in particular, but I'll be honest, like, I have had such extreme things done and said to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have been before we started this business, I was in a meeting. I've told this story before too. I flew to Las Vegas for a meeting, and I was told that I was meeting with this guy who was just like flat terrifying. Like, everybody in my company was afraid of him. They all basically wished me well and sent me on the plane. And I was like, hey, well, here goes nothing. So I get in this meeting and I'm with a coworker of mine who also just fortunately tends to be, or happens to be 6 feet tall as well. So we're in this boardroom in Las Vegas and this man walks in, and I am betting you he's 5'6". So my friend and I stand up to shake his hand, and he literally gives us the weirdest look you've ever seen. And he stands on a chair to shake my hand. Like, he would not shake my hand. And at that moment, I was like, we got him. Like, we got him. Like, this meeting is not going to be that bad, because for some reason, like, he's in his feelings. Like, he's older than me. This is a grown man.
Yeah.
I've had people ask me. I lived in Minneapolis for a long time. I had more than one person ask if I played for the Lynx, which would be an honor, would be a profound honor. But I am not capable of dribbling a basketball, so that's not going to work.
The only other story I can remember, Amy, is going to New York City
Yes,
and doing some fabric searching. And it's some guy coming up to us in the store and being like, "What are you, 7 feet tall?" And like just said it so like
condescending.
so gross. And I was just like, get out of here. So I think you really have had like a few just
So for me,
real.
like, I don't care anymore about the questions. Like, that rolls off me like water off a duck's back. I'm so over that, and I don't expend any energy. But if you go to the extremes, if you're going to be extreme about it,
mhm.
then that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sorry that those things happen to you. The man standing on the chair, I'm not getting over that. I'm not living that
That's a core memory, let me just
down.
tell you. And then nobody in my business could believe it. Like, when I called my company and I was like, you guys, he literally walked in, and thank goodness I had my friend and actually another friend, two friends in there that I worked with, coworkers, and they both thankfully were eyewitnesses, so they can confirm. And then they asked if we were recruiting a basketball team, and I was like, no, sir. We're here for the business at hand, but we can talk about that. If we can like reach a deal, then we'll talk about that. Maybe we can both mutually benefit.
There you go. You gotta use it to your advantage somehow. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Now I also kind of want to get into Amalli Talli. So I was just wondering if you guys can share a little bit of the story behind Amalli Talli and what inspired you guys to start a tall specific clothing brand.
Yeah, should I take it away?
Take it away.
Um, so Allie and I have always been close. There's 8 years in age difference between the two of us, but growing up, we always had kind of this like I don't know if it's a joke or just this thing we'd always say, like, someday we're going to have our own store. Like, I don't know where it came from. Maybe Allie remembers, but it just was always like our thing. We come from a very entrepreneurial family. Everyone on our dad's side owns their own business. Our dad did. So we grew up with that kind of a mindset. And, obviously we went through our struggles and this and that. And there was one day I was shopping at a local store in Minneapolis, and I was so frustrated by the experience. And I was having lunch with our mom and dad, and I kind of broke down. And my mom knew a lot of those struggles, but that wasn't something that I necessarily opened up to our dad because he's not like a shopping guy. He doesn't get it. It's and not his cup of tea. But I think for the first time, like I really kind of had a breakdown and meltdown. And so just in the way that he does, our dad so matter of factly looked at me and said, "Why don't you and Allie just do it? Like, why don't you just, well, you know what's wrong. You know what the market needs. You just do it." And I was like, yeah, we should just do it. And so that's kind of the joke. But, it was an evolution. And Allie can talk a little bit more to this too. But I was done and out of college. She was still in college. And so I think that planted the seed for us, but it would still be several years after that before we really got the ball rolling. And I'll kind of pass the mic to her, but it was really important that she be allowed to have the opportunity, obviously finish school. And then, she wanted some experience in the real world first too.
Yeah.
So I'll
In
let
the
you.
thrilling world of corporate accounting and finance. But I also feel like it stemmed from like our tradition of going Christmas shopping annually together. Because our mom knew that she couldn't go out and like pick out any clothes for us and like succeed and nail it. And so she's like, why don't you guys just try on a couple things, that you want, and I'll wrap it up under the tree. So it kind of started from that too. But it was like a symptom of going into stores. There were hardly any that Amy could have like a ton of success at, just being 6'4". And honestly, like the struggle was real for me too. Maybe not as intensely as you, but then there was a store in the Mall of America back in those days that was just like tall girl specific. And so Amy would go in there, but I found I could not wear anything in there because it was all too long. So
Yeah.
I did feel, speaking, going back to the experience of being 5'10", it is kind of like a weird place because at the time I feel like if people did tall, they just did like the tall side of
Extreme.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. It wasn't necessarily your style, which is also how we got here because it was very like old and matronly, but they did have like the inches to it, right? Like there was like the 36, 37, 38-inch inseams, but that's just like too long for me. So I feel like through those like annual trips that we did, it just was like a theme that really stuck out to us too. So when we decided to get like more serious about it and put a business plan together, we started going to like the apparel markets that are around the country. We did that for a couple of years just to learn and get our footing. And then it took off from there. And our business has had like a lot of different evolutions and pivot points, but that's kind of like the spark that ignited what we felt like needed to change.
And honestly, as a short, tall girly myself, I get it
Yeah.
100% because you try shopping in the regular section. Of course, that's not long enough, but then
Yep.
you shop with tall specific. Sometimes it's a little bit too long. So
Yep.
having that like weird in between can also make things very frustrating as well. So I'm really glad that you spoke on that. And then you guys were talking about how especially specifically Amy, went to an in-person store that was specifically for tall girls. Can
Yes.
we hear like a little bit more about that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of what Allie kind of said at the end, but it was supposed to be this great, it was like the experience that every tall woman dreams of, right? Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
go into a store and now I can actually pick anything I want on the walls to go try on. Like, this is like the Mecca. And, you know, it's every business has their own brand, has their own style, has their own vibe, as they should. That's what makes all of this really great. And it allows people to find the best fit for them. For me personally, I didn't feel like any of it was, the length might have been there, but I didn't feel like it was going to represent my personality, my vibe, my style. I didn't love, so you have a concession, right? Like, do I go find the styles that I want to wear and sacrifice on the fit? Or do I find the fit and sacrifice on the style? And neither of that worked for me, point blank. Just, I hated that that had to be my option, because I'm gonna be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, I went the route of taking the style and sacrificing on the fit.
Mm.
Because like it was just such a big deal to me to be able to like represent myself, show my personality, show my vibe. I felt like it was more important that I put out to the world like how I wanted myself to be seen, versus just having sleeves that go to my wrist. But it was just a really frustrating shopping experience. I didn't really necessarily understand kind of the vibe or some of the things, and I just felt like we can do both. Like, let's bridge both together. Like, let's bring the colors, the patterns, the cuts, things that you're seeing in, like, let's have fun. That's the thing. That's maybe the best way to say it, is I wanted like a spark. I wanted fun. I wanted energy in my clothes, and all of it felt so dark and somber and safe.
Mm.
And there's a
Interesting
lot to
word.
that I understand now, being in the business world even more so than I did. But you still have to have fun, and you
Mm.
still have to want to like get up and get dressed in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually, that's a very interesting point that you touched on. And I'm probably going to circle back. Oh, not me using corporate jargon. I'll probably return back to that topic in a sec. But I also do want to ask a little bit about, because hearing that there was literally an in-person store specifically for tall girls, like
Mhm.
that is quite literally unheard of. I will
Yeah.
say this, even this is the first time that I'm hearing about it. And I don't know whether or not this like store still exists in person, but I do want
Yeah.
to ask like what your thoughts are on why there aren't maybe more tall specific brick
Yeah.
and mortars, why they don't really exist, or
Yeah.
why tall clothing isn't really found in stores.
So this particular store no longer exists.
Oh, well, there's that.
There's that. But that was actually one of the driving reasons why so Allie kind of mentioned, we've gone through a lot of evolutions in our business model. And when we started, like, nobody knew less about online or e-commerce than the two people you're talking to right now. Like, we didn't know anything about that world. Um, And we just thought, based on our personal experience, like, how cool would it be to have that experience, but actually see things that you want to see that also fit. And so the first rendition of our business was a brick and mortar. We had a brick and mortar store in Minneapolis for 3 years. It was a completely different concept because it was more of a boutique. And so what I mean by that is, as Allie said, we went to apparel markets, and we would try to cherry pick tall girl friendly styles, right? Like things that weren't designed for us. And listen, like, we have photos with like tape measures around our necks or whatever, because we were those people. We were the only people in the whole place that would be like measuring sleeves, measuring body length, measuring shoulders, measuring whatever.
Taking samples off the rack and being
Yeah.
like, we're gonna need to try this on. We'll bring it back in a second.
People didn't know what to think of us. Like, we were just kind of crazy, but we were also like 2 feet taller than a lot of the showroom reps there. So everybody was like, okay, just do what you got to do. Um, and so that was why we had that model, because we thought, oh my gosh, like, we designed a really cool store. Actually, our mom, it was such a labor of love. Like, we built out and had the coolest store that had all of our visions and our vibe. And we really tried to make that work for a couple of years, until it became just glaringly obvious that that was not the right way to do it. And we were still doing a disservice to the niche, which is why now we have kind of a pointed and pretty extreme view on like tall girl friendly, and that concept, because we did it. Like, we lived that every single day, and we know its shortcomings. But to go back to the original question, that really was the boost for us and why we wanted to have that in-store experience. And I can pivot and pass the baton to Allie here, but there is a reason. It's very expensive to have a
Yeah.
store.
Mm,
And I'll
I
let.
was literally gonna say, like, nobody's gonna enjoy this answer because it's not fun, but literally just like the overhead of having a physical store and its employees and all the things. So if you think about people that have a lot of brick and mortar presence, like let's take a Lululemon or whatever, they also have a huge e-commerce presence that in like reality really supports keeping their brick and mortar open.
mm,
So it's not really, I mean, it is for some people sustainable to have a brick and mortar, but I think I would say a majority of companies that have a successful brick and mortar are also powered by a very stable e-commerce business just to help with the general um, expense. And even in our experience, like we had people from the Minneapolis metro that would make the drive to our specific suburb mall. They would come in, they would have the experience, and then we launched our online store, and all of a sudden we're getting online orders from people that live like 10 minutes away from the mall. And so it's like everybody, I feel like, does want to have that experience, but maybe not weekly, monthly, even once a quarter. Maybe they want to go like twice a year and have that
mhm.
experience. And unfortunately, that's not enough to keep
Mhm.
a brick and mortar up
Yeah.
and running. And so, like Amy said, we just thought this would be the best thing ever to give tall women that experience. It was a great starting point for us to get our name out there and meet a lot of customers that are still like in our core customer base today and have helped us spread the word. But a lot of the behavior just shifted online even for us after one or two visits. So
And if you think about the example that Allie gave with like a Lululemon, that's more of like a general retailer, right? Like they have a huge body of customers that they can draw from. Obviously, you're going to get into demographics and all of that, but I'm just saying, like from a fit perspective, you have a huge pool that you can draw your customer base from. So now when you scale that down to a niche like us, that pool looks very different. Not to say that there's not a ton of tall women because we all know that there is, but
Mhm.
it's just not the same concentration. And so we got to the point where we were like, hey, we can allocate all this money to keeping this brick and mortar open, or we can pivot and accomplish two things. One, going to our own brand, like really build out our own brand, have our own line, and then also do a better job of reaching people all across the country. And that just made more sense to us, again, with how we wanted to serve the niche.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because I mean, I don't know for sure because I don't have my own tall clothing brand, but maybe you guys can kind of like confirm this. On top of, having a brick and mortar, that already being expensive, I'm sure that trying to create tall clothing is also expensive. I mean, there's like more fabrics there. I'm pretty more because of the extra length. I'm sure there's a lot more like back and forth in terms of having to like remake samples based on proportions and so forth. So it's like that side is already expensive. Then adding, a physical place and as you said, like employees, and I'm sure you have light bills and heat bills and all that other stuff. Like all of that does add up, and I can understand the point that I think it was Ali who made that point about online sales ultimately supporting those physical stores. So,
And also, like from our perspective, keeping a price point that feels fair
Mhm.
to us and for our customers is driven by not having also like if you have the expense of all these other brick and mortar and like physical spaces and pop-ups and whatever you're doing, ultimately the cost of your products has to go up too
mhm.
to support that. Um, I mean, there are some people that have, like Old Navy has reasonable price clothing and stuff. But again, back to my example of like a Lululemon, I feel like now being in this industry for over a decade, we've met with people that like supply these people. We have an idea of what it costs them to make things and what their pricing could be have they not have all of this like physical storefront to support. So I also feel like for Amy and I, it was more important to provide like fair
Yeah.
pricing or reasonable pricing versus like trying to sustain both worlds and therefore making like the cost of our products go up for our customer.
Yeah, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And honestly, like, who's to say that Amalli Talli won't be in store again someday? You honestly never
Never say
know.
never.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that and why there aren't really that many tall specific brick and mortars. I think that kind of like brings light to a lot of things because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes the tall girlies are selfish and it's like, oh, we deserve stores in person,
For
deserve stores in
sure.
person, but we don't always think about like the actual like costs behind it.
Hmm.
Um, and then there was a point that Amy actually made in terms of having to choose between style and fit. And there was a question that maybe this could have been the answer to, but maybe I can, combine it. Do you think that because my question was, what's one thing that you wish everyone knew about being tall that most brands get wrong, and how do you guys fix that? So, do
Hmm.
you think that it's having to choose between style and fit, or maybe something else?
The problem, in my just humble opinion, is that it's more than one thing. And I
Mhm.
think that's why it's such a rough experience because I think people will pick and choose what they try to fix, but you can't. It really is like everything. You know what I mean? And so whether it's all the nuances on the pattern, I'm talking everybody, one of my biggest problems with Tall Friendly is that they add length to the bottom, but they forget that women's our proportions are very different everywhere than
Hmm.
someone who's 5'4". And the average fit model or mannequin in Los Angeles is based on proportions of someone who's 5'4". Okay, I'm a full foot taller. So there is no way that that proportion base is going to work for me. Like the math doesn't math there. And so I think it's allowing women to have the same kind of shopping experience to find the things that match them and their personality, just like everybody else. But it's remembering that it's more than just length. You know, like you can put a pair of pants on that are 37 inches, but if they've done no work to the pattern in the pelvis and the hips and the scoop and all of that, I'd rather wear the short pants because it's going to be so uncomfortable that it's almost like I'm not sure if it's better to be uncomfortable or have a sled. I don't know. Like to me, those are both awful. So I think the thing that people get wrong is that they try to pick and choose instead of just doing it all correctly.
Mm.
And kind of going with that, we've spoken to this on our social media page too. But when people try to capitalize on tall just like quickly and just
Mhm.
kind of grab what they can, I feel like the education behind their products is lacking too, right? So like there's no size guide. Like they're like it's tall, but like the inseam isn't listed. And they're like, well, our model is like 5'9". And we're like, okay. But like, does she have like a longer inseam? Is she longer in the torso? Like it's hard for me to tell. Um, Things like that too, right? So like they just kind of want you to be happy because they're like, look, it's tall, or like it's like I did it in long, like
Yeah.
yay. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like, because if you're gonna shop online, like successfully, you need to have information. So for me, that is a huge pet peeve too. Um, and I could go on and on about that because it doesn't just relate to like length and model, it's like waist size and all of those things too. But I think a lot of people just skip the effort
Yeah.
behind it too.
Or
Like,
the cost. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like we were chatting with India with you about this. We've sat in those meetings. So we've sat with denim suppliers who supplied the big brands, right? Like or the department store. So we can tell you without a shadow of a doubt what those conversations sound like because we heard it. And so, what people have to understand is when you're dealing with manufacturing, first of all, the units to cut something like denim is astronomically high. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pairs of jeans is the smallest amount that you can order.
Mm-hmm.
And most people order like tens of thousands or several thousands at the least. And so what happens is, there's still a business at the end of the day. So if you're somebody, let's just take, for example, Nordstrom, and Nordstrom wants to bring in a line of tall. They're going to work with their denim provider and they're going to say, like, what's the most cost effective way we can do this? And the denim provider is going to say, okay, here's our best selling styles. Here's the ones that we would recommend. Let's cut these in a 36-inch. But here's the thing, you can't adjust any other element of the pattern, because when you start getting into the cut and sew and the grading and all the things that come together to make a pair of jeans work, that's where now we're talking different fit, different patterns, the cut and sew operation is dramatically impacted. It raises the price, it raises the minimum units that they can order. Mm-hmm. So what they say is, cool, just give us a 36, like just keep everything else the same and give us the 36 and the inch or whatever. And that's why then you get it and you put it on and you're momentarily joyful that they're long enough, but then uncomfortable the rest of the day because you can't figure out why you have a wedgie all day, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to say it, but that literally is what happens because nothing else on the pattern was adjusted. And that's not a guess.
I am more long in the body than in my legs. So for me, I always felt like the back of the jean, like crack and then like jean, So like, I'm like, why does everything feel like I'm going to expose myself literally all the time? So things like that too. It's like rise, it's scoop how it feels in the butt. All of those things, like she was speaking to, are just completely like skipped over, not only for cost, but for time too. Like, how quick can we get this to market? They don't want to sample it. They don't have a fit model that's 6'2", so it's like,
or they might not have one at all. It might be a mannequin.
Right. Totally.
Fair point. Thank you so much for sharing that. Honestly, you made like a lot of good points there about how, there's almost like this lack of understanding of the market of tall women, especially because we're, such a niche group of people. And, with costs and, timing, trying to get everything out there quickly. I mean, I don't want to say it's a mess, but it kind of is a little bit. And it like, I think people fail to realize how that greatly affects tall women's confidence and so forth, because clothes do play a big part in it. And when we have terribly fitting clothes and when we don't have stuff that fits us properly or isn't like expressive or representative of who we are, it can be very challenging for us. And while we're on that note of confidence and so forth, I do want to ask you one last question. What is one piece of advice that you want to give to the tall girlies who are listening right now, who are struggling with their self-esteem because of their height?
There's two things that I think made a difference for me. And so I'm going to just lean on both of them. One, I don't care what it is in life, but I would really recommend people find their passions or the things that they enjoy doing. Find something that you can borrow confidence from, right? Like, it doesn't have to be sports. For me, it was volleyball, but that's not actually the case for probably most tall girls, because most tall girls don't play volleyball or sports or whatever at a high level. But whatever it is, I don't care if it's acting, singing, building things, like whatever it is, I would say lean into that, because if you are feeling fulfilled and you're doing things that make your heart happy, for me and others I've talked to, that has a way of kind of spreading. I don't think there's a quick solution. So I'm not going to say all of this is like a magic wand you wave and like, bam, it's better overnight. It's a process. It's a process. These are things that help me in my process. One, find things that you love doing, that you feel confident doing, and lean into that. And then the second thing I think is super important is having a village around you. So, whether that looks like being in a community of other people who are built like you, other tall women, I think that's incredibly important. The work that you do, India, and bringing people together to share experiences is completely important. It's very important. Um, but I also think it doesn't have to be a community of tall women if there's people that are around. I think that's a great part of it. But I don't think, for me, I had friends that weren't tall, and our mom is tall, but not like super tall. So I think it's the people who you surround yourself with, whether or not they're in your family, they may or may not be your friends, the people you choose to spend time with. I think that they play a really pivotal role in supporting you in all walks of life. But certainly, if they're aware of any confidence or insecurities you may feel, they can play a really important role until you're there and can do it for yourself. You know what I mean? Like I'm married to somebody who's significantly shorter than I am. And if you would have asked me 20 years ago if that would have been the case, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. Never. But, in actuality, he is like one of my biggest supporters, and he has helped me even after we start dating, find real confidence. I think it's just people who know you and love you and can help support you, and you have to lean into that until you can do it for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, of course, having a tall sister helps out a lot, I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Amy. That was so nice. I'll ask Allie the same question. What is one piece of advice that you want to give to the tall girlies who are listening to this right now, who may be struggling with their self-esteem because of their height?
I spoke to this earlier in the episode too, but I think it's important to realize like the impact, like about how you feel about yourself also has on other people, especially like younger people. So I was saying, Amy, might have been struggling with some things, but she never showed it to me. And so I think like embodying that attitude of like, oh, it might be getting me down, but I'm going to like encourage somebody else by like owning it, even if it's kind of like a fake it till you make it, because like I just think once you realize like you've helped one other person feel better about like how they're built, how they're made, how they look, whatever it is, I feel like in turn that helps make you feel better, right? So it's like not just like a focus on yourself, but like helping somebody else come out of it. And I kind of feel like the best way that we do that for people, especially younger people, is to model confidence. And maybe it doesn't come naturally at first. Maybe you have to practice it. And I feel like that definitely happened to me. Like we started this business when I was like 25, and I did not have any confidence, not in the business world, not in, like how I was built, who I was. But I think just kind of like showing up and owning it every day to the best of your ability, um, helps too. And I think you just really have to keep in mind like the impact that you're having on other girls, and young women. And I feel like that's so important to keep in mind. Like when we started this business, the marketing that anybody else had was always like tall girl problems. This is the worst, but like whatever, here's something to like maybe help you get through it, So when Amy and I started, we're like, no, we're making this positive. Like, no more tall girl problems. Like, yes, they exist, but that's not going to be our marketing focus. It's going to be like, look how good you make these pieces look because like they fit you. So I think just staying on the positive side, leaning into the wins and, just modeling it for other people.
Yeah, of course. It's always the small things, the small wins that add up.
Yes.
And speaking of impact, you guys are definitely having an impact on the tall girlies. I do want to say a thank you on the behalf of the entire tall girl community for what you do, what you guys do, all of the tall brands out there. Y'all are just some courageous people who are no, like literally, like something like this is like very scary. And you guys are going in there, and as you just said, with like positivity, and you're doing the thing, you know what I mean? And
So,
it's just an amazing thing to see. So I just want to say, on behalf of the Tugger community, we are very grateful for you guys.
Thank you so much. And
yeah.
Amy spoke to this earlier, but what we love what you're doing too. Anytime there's a community, anytime that we can all like bond, share experiences, lift each other up, like that all helps so, so much. So respect
Mhm.
to you as
Oh my
well.
gosh, thank you. And thank you guys for being on the podcast. Can we
Thank you for
where
having
can we find you guys on the internet? This is like the time to plug yourselves.
us. Amy.
We are online at amallitali.com, AMALLITALLI.com, and then Instagram, Facebook. That's about as much of the social networks as we have the capacity to manage. So,
Yes.
I
Pinterest, if you want to
oh
pin some things.
yes, good call. Good call.
Yeah, I definitely get it. As trying to manage everything can definitely be crazy, but all of those are going to be linked below. And I'm going to plug myself at a Tall Girls podcast literally everywhere. You can search it up on Google. Google knows me by now, or I would hope that Google does know me by now. But Amalli Talli's links is going to be down there. My links are going to be down there. And thank you again so, so much, Amy and Allie, for coming on the podcast and having a conversation with me and just talking about your business and the story behind it and so forth. It was a pleasure having you guys here.
Thank
We loved it.
you.
Thanks for having us. This was so
Yes, thank you
fun.
so much.
Yay, of course. And, guys, make sure you check them out. As I said before, the links are going to be in the description. And until then, until you hit us up and check them out and all that stuff, we will catch you guys in the next one. Good night and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.